Columbia Pictures, a movie studio that, if I'm being honest, anyone could take or leave depending on the movie's quality. It gave us some famous movies such as Dracula Dead and Lovin' It, The People vs. Larry Flynt, the Men in Black films, the Stuart Little films, the I Know What You Did Last Summer films. I'll stop now before I get ahead of myself. In terms of animation, like some of the movies I mentioned, Columbia has dipped its hands into the medium. But in this history look back, we'll be looking into a branch of it that specializes in the subject in question. An entertainment industry that, like Columbia Pictures itself, you could take or leave. I'm Shane Vance, and today, we will be looking into the history of the one and only Sony Pictures Animation. Before I talk about SPA itself, let's first get into how its parent company, Sony Pictures Entertainment, was made. In a pivotal move, the Coca-Cola Company announced its decision to divest from Columbia Pictures on September 1, 1987, just 5 years after acquiring the studio and 9 years before I was born. As part of this strategic shift, Coca-Cola sold its entertainment assets to TriStar Pictures, in which it already held a 39.6% stake. The resulting entity, Columbia Pictures Entertainment Incorporated, would be owned with a 49% ownership by Coca-Cola, with the remaining shares split between existing stakeholders with 31% and TriStar shareholders with 20%. This merger also led to the consolidation of the television divisions, Columbia/Embassy Television and TriStar Television, under the newly formed Columbia Pictures Television. Soon in January 1989, CPE announced the revival of a previously defunct film branch called Triumph Films, planning to turn it into a worldwide subsidiary called Triumph Releasing Corporation and have it bear the task of distributing and promoting Columbia and TriStar films. However, this new entity's lifespan was short-lived, as the Microsoft company, Sony, soon set its sights on acquiring CPE. Later in September of that year, Sony secured an option to purchase Coca-Cola's 49% stake in CPE for $27 per share, and Sony soon announced its plan to acquire a company called Goober Peters Entertainment Company Incorporated for $200 million, with the founders, Peter Goober and John Peters, slated to become co-chairmen of Columbia. This move, orchestrated by Sony's then-president and CEO, Norio Oga, was not without controversy since Goober and Peters were still contracted to Warner Brothers, leading to a threatened lawsuit from Time Warner's then-chairman, Steve Ross. The dispute was eventually resolved when Sony sold half of its interest in Columbia House and cable distribution rights to Warner Brothers. The agreement also saw Columbia sell its stake in the Burbank Studios and acquire Lorimar Studios from Warner Brothers. A month later on Halloween, Sony completed its friendly takeover of CPE, acquiring 99.3% of the company's common stock. The acquisition, which was valued at $4.9 billion, was financed by 5 major Japanese banks and marked a significant milestone in Sony's expansion into the entertainment industry. 2 years later, on August 7, 1991, the company was rebranded as Sony Pictures Entertainment, signaling a new era in the world of film and television. Now, let's jump ahead to 2001, where Sony Pictures once mulled a sale of its visual effects arm, Sony Pictures Imageworks, but no buyer was interested. Impressed by SPI's own CGI work, most famously the animation in the Nickelodeon movie, Good Burger, and buoyed by the box office triumph of DreamWorks' Shrek, Sony opted instead to reshape SPI into an animation studio. The company initially earmarked an adaptation for the manga series Astro Boy, a project that had been in live-action development since 1997, as SPI's first all-CGI feature, but the film never got past the development stage, and Astro Boy would eventually get an animated adaptation made by the short-lived Imagi Animation Studios in 2009. To prove itself as capable of handling CGI, SPI produced 2 short films, The Chub Chubs, which is about an alien janitor who was recently kicked out of a diner who befriends a group of destructive creatures called the Chub Chubs and won an Academy Award, and Early Bloomer, which is about a group of tadpole siblings and the green one ends up going through early stages in physical development. Both of these shorts act as experimental proving grounds for full-length animation. Columbia Pictures had distributed a handful of animated titles produced by outside studios, ranging from classic movies such as 1001 Arabian Nights and The Little Prince and the Eight-Headed Dragon to more 21st century releases like Heavy Metal, Final Fantasy The Spirits Within, Eight Crazy Nights and Monster House. But before the latter two films were released, on May 9, 2002, Sony Pictures Animation was finally made when Sony wanted to formalize making CGI films, and it was given charge of creating animated characters, stories, and feature films, while SPI would provide the digital production pipeline for those titles and continue to service live-action projects with visual effects. Exactly 1 year after its birth in 2003, Sony Pictures Animation unveiled a robust slate of upcoming projects. Among them were a feature-length adaptation of the Celtic folk ballad Tam Lin and a movie version of the Chub Chubs. But let's get into one of the film ideas that they chose to be their first movie, which was entitled Open Season. It's the story of Boog, a domesticated grizzly bear who lives a content life as a performer with his handler, a ranger named Beth, in the town of Timberline. However, Boog ends up meeting a goofy deer named Elliot, who Boog frees from the clutches of a nasty hunter named Shaw, and as thanks, Elliot shows Boog the world outside his comfort zone, which soon culminates in Boog getting into trouble and Beth deciding to release him into the forest. Desperate to go back home, especially since hunting season is just around the corner, Boog has the clueless Elliot guide him through the woods where they occasionally butt heads with the animal community living within it. The ideas for Open Season came from cartoonist Steve Moore, who is known for his comic strip, In the Bleachers. Moore and producer John B. Carls submitted the story to Sony in June 2002, and the film immediately went into development. On February 29, 2004, Sony Pictures Animation announced the beginning of the production on the film. The film location was inspired by the Idaho towns, Sun Valley, and McCall, and the Sawtooth National Forest. References to the Lawn Lake, Colorado, Dam Flood, Long's Peak, and other points of interest in the area are depicted in the film. The Sony animation team developed a digital tool called Shapers that allowed the animators to reshape the character models into stronger poses and silhouettes and subtle distortions such as squash, stretch, and smears, typical of traditional, hand-drawn animation. To choose the voice cast, director Jill Colton blindly listened to audition tapes, unknowingly picking Martin Lawrence and Ashton Kutcher for the lead roles. Their ability to improvise significantly contributed to the creative process, and Colton even once said that they really became meshed with the characters. Until the film's premiere, Lawrence and Kutcher never met during production. The original premise for the movie was that some quasi-domesticated forest animals would lurk about in some mountain towns, and the rangers there would decide to relocate them back to the forest, which soon resulted in said animals being limited to just one in Boog. Some other story ideas were that Beth was a lot more abusive to Boog and she forced him into doing the stage show, which was changed to make her more sympathetic, and that Shaw's defeat was going to be at the hands of Gordy, the town sheriff, which I think was changed to make Boog the one who takes him down. To promote the movie, Boog's stuffed bear, Mr. Dinkelman, was created and released among other plush toys. It unfortunately doesn't play the song heard in the movie.
If you go out in the woods today, you're sure of a big surprise. If you go out in the woods today, you'd better go in disguise.
Other promotions featured toys at restaurants such as Burger King, the Hungry Jack's, and Carl's Jr., the latter of which didn't release until 2007, sometime after the film came out. The movie's soundtrack includes an original score by Ramin Djawadi and some original songs by Paul Westerberg of the band, The Replacements, with 3 songs being excluded from the CD, a different version of I Belong, Westerberg's personal version of Wild as I Wanna Be, and Mexican singer Rayleigh's song, Tu Eres el Amor, the latter of which was played during the end credits in the movie's Latin American dub, in which Rayleigh himself did Boog's voice. Open Season first premiered at the Greek Theatre on September 25, 2006 before it got a wider release 4 days later on September 29. The movie ended up getting mixed reviews from critics, with a score of 48% on Rotten Tomatoes, with professional critics like Kevin Smith giving the movie a thumbs up when he appeared as a guest on the Ebert and Roper show, stating that, if your kids like poop jokes as much as I do, Open Season will put a big smile on their faces. but Richard Roper himself gave the film a thumbs down and explained that it's just okay, the animation is uninspired. Regardless, the movie grossed $88.6 million in North America and $112.2 million in other countries, gaining a total of $200.8 million worldwide against an $85 million budget. Open Season was subsequently nominated for 6 Annie Awards, including one for Best Animated Feature, which it lost to Pixar's Cars, Best Animated Effects, Best Storyboarding in a Feature Production, Best Character Design in a Feature Production, and Best Production Design in a Feature Production. A video game based on the movie was released on September 18th of the year it came out, for PlayStation 2, Xbox, Xbox 360, Nintendo DS, GameCube, Game Boy Advance, PlayStation Portable, and Microsoft Windows. Over a month later, on November 19th, a Wii version of the game was released alongside the launch of said console. Open Season was soon released on DVD, Blu-ray, and UMD video 4 months later on January 30th, 2007, which included the animated short, Boog and Elliot's Midnight Bun Run. 3 years after that, Open Season ended up getting a Blu-ray release on November 16, 2010. The movie developed into a franchise, with 3 other Open Season films that came out on DVD, with Open Season 2 in 2009, Open Season 3 in 2011, and Open Season Scared Silly in 2016, with the animation for the second and third film being handled by Real FX Creative Studios, though the second also used Sony Pictures Imageworks, just like the first film, while Scared Silly was animated by Rainmaker Entertainment. Some years after the fourth film came out, a short-lived Canadian animated TV series based on the movie called Open Season Call of Nature was released and ran from fall of 2023 to spring of 2024. Now, getting into my personal thoughts about the film, I thought it was pretty decent for what it was, though I didn't think it was anything to write home about. I also think that Elliot was pretty annoying with how he kept causing problems for Boog, and I didn't like how cruel most of the other animals were to Boog either. And in case you're wondering, I like the third Open Season out of all the sequels. The second was mediocre at worst, and the fourth one was a bargain bin nightmare. Also, I've only seen bits and pieces of the TV show. Open Season is a movie you can either take or leave. It has interesting moments and some great songs to listen to, but personally, I think it's okay in small doses. Less than a year later, in 2007, Sony Pictures followed Open Season up with another animal-centric movie, this one being titled Surf's Up, which is about a young rockhopper penguin named Cody Maverick who wants to become a famous surfer like his idol, Big Z. He gets his opportunity when he is brought to Pengu Island for an annual surfing competition. However, after an embarrassing wipeout, he ends up being taken to the opposite side of the island by a lifeguard, Lonnie, where he meets a hermit named Geek, who is soon revealed to be Big Z himself and was thought to be dead but actually went into hiding. Cody then spends his time learning about surfing from Geek while also being conflicted on what really matters while in a competition. The origins of Surf's Up stretch back to at least 2002, where Sony was developing a surfing penguin story that was pitched as a mashup of West Side Story and Romeo and Juliet. When Chris Jenkins reviewed the concept, he concluded it wasn't viable, and the idea was shelved. He later revived it, only to reframe it as a mock documentary about a surfing competition. When the film was first announced, the French directing brother duo of Paul and Gaten Britzy were attached, but they were eventually replaced by Ash Brannon and Chris Buck in 2004, and the surfing company Quicksilver came aboard as a creative consultant. Professional surfers Kelly Slater and Rob Machado even provided hands-on feedback to the animation team to make the waves look authentic. To reinforce the documentary vibe, the voice actors were encouraged to improvise their lines. Some early test footage revealed an unused character that may have been an early design for Cody. One story element that was made up for the film was the penguin chick character of Arnold as the voice actress of Lonnie, Zooey Deschanel, improvised a scene where she would save Arnold from drowning, and the filmmakers thought it was so hilarious that they made Arnold an actual character, and he was voiced by Chris Buck's son, Reed. For For the movie's promotion, the studio rolled out a variety of tie-ins and merchandise, including 8 limited edition toys released by McDonald's, with Australian retailers swapped a few of the US figures for plush versions of Cody, Lonnie, Chicken Joe, and Geek, a plush toy of Cody being released by Build-A-Bear, complete with surf-themed outfits and accessories that could be added in-store or ordered online, and more. The film's soundtrack incorporates one track that was credited to the pseudonym Big Nose, likely a strategic choice for promotional appeal. It features 2 Green Day songs, Welcome to Paradise from their Dookie album and an instrumental rendition of Holiday, both of which were used as ambient music but were excluded from the official album. The movie's score, composed by Mikkel Dana, was issued as a limited edition 23-track CD, produced in a run of just 1,000 units. When the film surfed its way to the big screen on June 8, 2007, it did manage to receive some positive reviews. Critics praised the film for its animation, comedy, and telling its story in the style of mockumentaries, getting a 79% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Some critics have stated that despite coming too soon after many Penguin films like March of the Penguins and Happy Feet, Surf's Up managed to stand out. The Dallas Morning News critic Nancy Chernin stated in her review of the film that, "Sorry cynics, Surf's Up is a charmer. And if the birds look somewhat familiar, they have something fresh to say about friendship and what winning is all about." For the box office, Surf's Up opened at number 4 on its opening weekend and grossed out $58.8 million domestically in North America and received $93.1 million in the other countries, which makes a worldwide total of $152 million against its budget of $100 million. It got nominated for a bunch of awards, but there's far too many to list, so I'll just mention one: Best Animated Feature at the 80th Academy Awards. It did manage to win at least 3 awards: 2 Annies for Outstanding Achievement for Animated Effects, Animation Production Artist for animator John Clark, and a Meus Premios Nick Award, which is the Brazilian version of the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards, for Movie of the Year. Ubisoft launched a Surf's Up video game that was released alongside the movie and was available for Windows, Mac OS X, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, GameCube, and Wii. All versions of the game share the same gameplay, with only minor graphical tweaks, while the Nintendo DS edition uses a distinct format. 4 months later, Surf's Up was released on DVD, Blu-ray, and UMD Video in America on October 9th. Both the DVD and Blu-ray involved 2 animated short films, which were the Chub Chubs, and a Christmas-themed sequel called The Chub Chubs Save Christmas. A decade after the movie came out, a direct-to-DVD sequel called Surf's Up 2 Wave Mania released in 2017, which is just one large advertisement as it starts famous wrestlers, and the story is rather weak in comparison to the first, so I wouldn't recommend watching it. A TV series based on the film is currently being developed by Atomic Cartoons. As for my thoughts of the movie, I was initially confused and a little put off by the movie's documentary style of storytelling, but thought the movie was okay overall, though the whole win or lose moral felt pretty ham-fisted, even for a 2000s movie. Surf's Up showed what Sony Pictures was capable of in their heyday and what they could still be capable of going forward. Two years later, Sony Pictures released Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, based on the story of the same name by Judy Barrett. It's about a wannabe inventor named Flint Lockwood, who is ridiculed by everyone in his town, a small island named Swallow Falls, because his inventions often cause problems. However, one invention he makes,
Flint Lockwood Diatonic Super Mutating Dynamic Food Replicator, or for short, the Flizzerlifer,
has the ability to turn water into any food which he hopes to use for his community, since Swallow Falls can only afford to eat inedible sardines. The invention soon gets skyrocketed into the atmosphere, prompting Flint to use the water from the clouds to make it rain food for everyone in town. But the invention soon spirals out of control when it gets overused, forcing Flint and his new wannabe reporter friend Sam Sparks to find a way to clean up this mess. As I mentioned earlier, during the makings of Sony Pictures Animation, just a year after the company was made, the people who worked there unveiled its inaugural slate of animated projects. Among the developments was Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Initially, like with Surf's Up, the Britzy brothers were tapped to direct the movie, with Wayne Rice in talks to write the screenplay. However, in a significant shift, the project changed creative hands in 2006, with duo Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who previously made the MTV cartoon Clone High, taking the reins as directors and writers. Lord and Miller soon revealed that their vision for the film would be a clever send-up of the disaster movie genre, paying homage to classics like Twister and Armageddon, while also poking fun at the genre's more over-the-top elements. Soon, Lord and Miller spent a year crafting the story, with one idea being that Flint was a successful scientist who, rather than growing up in Swallow Falls, actually got stuck there when the food machine went on the fritz. However, that story element was shelved because Flint came across as kind of a jerk, and soon, Lord and Miller got fired due to story issues and replaced by new writers, who also failed to deliver after a year, and Lord and Miller were rehired in 2006 and given a second chance. This time, they approached the script with a fresh perspective, incorporating valuable input from their crew and completely overhauling the narrative. The new draft has imagined Flint as a flawed but lovable protagonist who was driven to be accepted by the people of his town. However, the film's future was once again uncertain when Amy Pascal, then head of DreamWorks Animation, expressed concerns about the story's lack of emotional depth, citing the absence of a core relationship to anchor the narrative. Despite the comedic success of the animatic stage, Pascal's feedback prompted Lord and Miller to reassess their story, and in a clever move, they elevated a background character from the original draft, who was a tackle shop owner, and upgraded him to be Flint's father, Tim, creating an emotional connection that Pascal was seeking.
I'm proud of you, Flint. I'm amazed that someone as ordinary as me could be the father of someone as extraordinary as you.
This experience taught Lord and Miller two invaluable lessons: the significance of collaborative storytelling and the importance of infusing emotion into the narrative, lessons that would shape their approach to future projects. Getting into some ideas that were tossed for the movie, there was a side story where Flint was asked to join a prestigious inventor society, led by an idol of his named Vance LaFleur, only to back out when he finds out that Vance created some problems to solve for fame, an idea that was actually used for the sequel that came out 3 years later. Other story ideas included the invention being shot out of the sky and into the ocean and creating a giant food monster, Flint and the mayor battling with celery sticks as swords, and a post-credit scene where it's revealed that Flint is actually the grandfather from the original story. In September 2008, Variety announced that the voices of Flint and Sam, Bill Hader and Anna Faris respectively, had signed on to the movie, with the rest of the principal cast comprising of James Caan, who voiced Tim, Bruce Campbell, who voiced the mayor, Rocky actor Mr. T, who voiced Earl the cop, and Andy Samberg, who voiced Brent, joining in. For the animation, the film was created using the animation rendering software Arnold, which was previously used to make Monster House, and animator Justin K. Thompson was a production designer for the movie. The movie's soundtrack was released under Lakeshore Entertainment on September 15, 2009, 2 weeks before the release of the film proper. The film's music and the album were both produced by composer Mark Mothersbaugh. The song that came out of the movie, Raining Sunshine, by Miranda Cosgrove, was released as a promotional single a month earlier in August. While we're on the subject, before Raining Sunshine, the filmmakers wanted the theme from the movie Xanadu to play over the end credits, but couldn't get the rights. In the movie's Japanese dub, though, the song Rainbow Forecast, sung by Shoko Nakagawa, was played over the end credits. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs premiered on September 12, 2009, as the main opening headliner at the Man Village Theater Showcase in Los Angeles, California, before it got a wider release 6 days later on September 18, alongside a digitally remastered version being released in IMAX 3D theaters. The movie received some good reviews from critics, with an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, and critics like Ernest Hardy of LA Weekly said that Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is smart, insightful on a host of relationship dynamics, and filled with fast-paced action, and he also praised the 3D effects, to which he said, "The effects are wonderful, full of witty sight gags that play out both center screen and on the periphery." For the box office, the film grossed $124.9 million in the United States and Canada and $118.1 million in other countries, and therefore received a worldwide total of $243 million. It was also nominated for a bunch of awards, like some Annie Awards, a Golden Globe Award for Best Animated Feature Film, a Satellite Award for Best Animated or Mixed Media Feature, a Visual Effects Society Awards for Outstanding Animation in an Animated Feature Motion Picture, and an Outstanding Effects Animation in an Animated Feature Motion Picture. Around the same time as the movie's release, Ubisoft released a video game tie-in for the film for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Wii, Nintendo DS, PlayStation Portable, and Microsoft Windows. Though the DS and Wii version were released 3 days before the film came out. Nearly 4 months later, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs was released on DVD, Blu-ray disc, and PSP UMD on January 5, 2010, in both the USA and Canada. 5 months after that, a 3D Blu-ray DVD was released on June 22, 2010, and was the first 3D Blu-ray sold individually in America. In 2017, Cartoon Network released a show loosely based off the movie, and I never watched it on TV before. I saw it on the internet a few times, but I could not get past the rather weird-looking animation, and like with the Surf's Up DVD sequel and the 4th open season, I don't recommend watching it. Years later, in April 2021, Sony signed a deal with Disney to allow them access to their content, including Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and the sequel to stream on Disney Plus and Hulu, and to appear on Disney's linear TV shows, and Disney's access to Sony's films would come after their availability on Netflix. Getting into my thoughts on the movie, I enjoy it for the most part, from its animation to some of the characters. I wouldn't call it my favorite Sony animated movie though, as there are better ones available. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is what happens when you take a book and radically change its premise in all the right ways.